Welcome, Gaurav Arora, to the India Career Center. Um, the episode today we are trying to record is to understand about your experiences in Canada, how you have gone through that process of going to the destination. What are the various issues which you had to face, overcome those challenges, and what kind of learning we can take from your experience and help our aspiring young children, students, as well as who want to migrate there, could take learnings from you. And you being there in Canada, of course, is a great opportunity for a lot of our children to take advantage of, take your support in their destination, Canada. Uh, Before though, I would like to know a little bit about your early life in India and what exactly inspired you to get into this line of health industry and why destination Canada. So over to you, Gaurav, and welcome once again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here. Hopefully, I'm able to, give some tips or advice, from my story. So I'll be very casual and, yeah, hopefully it helps someone. Uh, yeah. So you asked me about how I actually chose healthcare or how Canada came to mind. So it's a very I wouldn't say filmy, but it's a very wavy story. So my original destination was was never Canada. Actually, I'll start from way before. So how I actually even started thinking about going abroad and trying it out. So I come from Lucknow. My father owns a grocery departmental store. Uh, it's a good business there. Everything is very comfortable, and just the nature of the person that I am is I never uh, am able to remain in a comfortable state for longer. I want to challenge all the time, so always been very mischievous during childhood. So uh, I used to watch as a child a lot of Discovery and National Geographic Channel. I guess most of the students in the 90s are somewhat some to a more larger extent, some to a lesser extent, inspired by that as far as career choices are concerned, because that those days internet wasn't as as widespread as it is today. So those was my access to the world, you can say. So yeah, so that's how I actually started to know about that. These countries are there. We used to study in geography. This is USA, this Canada, Australia. But what actually it is, how it feels like, because I had no relatives, or anyone that was abroad at that time, so I did not had any first-hand experience. So it seeing those things, it started enticing me. Uh, and then when I was I don't know, it's currently, I think it's always been in me that I wanted to be in healthcare without any particular reason. But then there was actually an unfortunate, I would say actually a fortunate incident. I met with an accident where I think it was in grade 9. uh, I went to ICU as a result. Stayed there for about 3 days. I still have a mark here from that. Had a few stitches, and for some reason that experience of staying there kind of you know made me motivated. I was in that time when you are in grade 9, grade 10, you start thinking, or people start pressurizing you or influence you in their own way, that you should start thinking about the future, what you're going to do. Healthcare, anyways, I was thinking, but that particular incident kind of made me that this is the career I want to be in. I did not know what. So I could be an engineer, I could be a doctor, nurse, whatever, scientist. All those thoughts came across my mind. So yeah, then come grade 10, grade 12. Things like the competitive exams started coming in, and I naturally realized that I'm very good at technology and engineering became a choice. Uh, I, I liked the biology aspect or the human physiology anatomy, but I did not really like the longer run because being a doctor, you have to, you know, put in 8 to 10 years at least to become a really, starting entry level specialist in India. So I did not wanted to take that route. I thought engineering is a good route and started, researching. Biomedical engineering was the closest that I could choose, and that's what I chose. And I did my engineering from from Jhansi, from the government college there. Uh, and when I was doing my engineering, uh, again up until now, I did not think I have to go where which country, but I had this thought in mind that if some time in my life I will eventually go abroad. Yeah, when I was doing engineering, I started looking for internships. Okay, it's part of the curriculum. I did two internships. One was at Max Hospital, which you also already covered in the introduction. So that, and then there was another one. But this one in particular, my internship actually got over very early. I had few weeks left, and I during my time there, I made good impression, you can say, on the management, and they said, "Would you like to do work on an analytics project?" I said, "Sure." I have a month. I'm in Delhi. Let me do it. So that's when I started working very closely with the CEO over there, and eventually met the CEO also a few times, and really saw the impact. They were able to make, like being a doctor or a nurse or any clinical profession, you're doing a great job, but you are somehow limited to the impact that you make, in your own scope. But being a healthcare administrator, you can make such a big impact if you're good at it. And I found, being, my father being a businessman, I understand the business side of it, and also operation side of it. I thought I had a good knack of it. Then I eventually started researching, how can I become a healthcare administrator. So talked to a few people, CEO there, and a few other networking helped me to decide that okay, I want to do a master's specializing in healthcare management, and that's how I started looking up the options. I knew, as I said, I wanted to go abroad and get that exposure. So when you think abroad, at least during my time, US comes to mind because again, the National Geographic or Discovery Channel, I would say 90% of the content is United States based. So I naturally chose those universities there as an option. Just did regular work as a student would do. I started my own research, which are the top universities, for those particular program, masters in healthcare administration. Um, so I shortlisted eventually a few universities, prepared for my GMAT on my own. So I did self study for that. I scored really good in GMAT and actually got into each and every university that I applied to, which made me more confident. But then eventually, I think the destiny had a different path etched for me. My visa got refused there twice. So I applied initially, it got refused. Then after a few weeks, I applied again refused. And the thing with US is you go to a short interview in the US embassy in Delhi. They do a 30-second interview, probably ask like 3 4 questions, but they don't give you an answer. Why are they refusing it? So that was a bit disheartening. But I already had a plan B. Uh, I knew UK was a bit easier to go. So I applied there. I actually applied to Canada as well, University of Toronto. I got into it, but because I was so focused on US and eventually went to the visa stage, which eventually got refused, the admissions deadline was over for University of Toronto by then, so I could not go to Canada. But UK, there were a couple of universities that still had the deadline extended, so I eventually went to University of Bradford. uh, yeah, I did my master's there, worked for a bit. Uh, Unfortunately, again, as I said, my story is a bit wavy. When I went that particular year, there was a visa called post study work permit. So when you go for a master's degree, you get 2 year work permit, open work permit, so you can work for an employer. But that very year when I went there, it was scrapped. So I could not work there. And no one was able to sponsor. So I wasn't able to find an employer who would be willing to sponsor me, because there's again a different uh, you know algorithm there. Certain things need to be met. I came back to India, uh, worked here for a few years, but then that that bug of having that international exposure was still there. And while I was in UK, and while I was trying my best to stay in the UK or at least somewhere in Europe, uh, I I searched globally which are the countries I can move to, which are the most immigration friendly. So few came on the top. Canada was one of them at the top, very top. New Zealand was the other, and then Denmark was the third option. So these three countries, even now, I think are I would say, at least from my personal opinion, are the most immigration friendly countries. Uh, and yeah, and then eventually I decided to go for New Zealand and Canada. And Canada got processed faster, so I joined. I came to Canada.
Okay, so quite interesting because you chose two different locations which are like diametrically opposite in two
Yeah.
different poles, one North Pole, one South Pole. And that's
Yes.
primarily because of the ease of getting the visa processed.
Yes. Ease of getting to permanent residency. So for for working, or even Australia, Singapore, Middle East like UAE, uh, and also a couple of countries in South America also were easier relatively. But towards the path of permanent residency, I found Canada and New Zealand at the time, at least, were most promising.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So now that we have learned a little bit about your personal journey, I think I must mention here that the process you went through yourself in terms of at the age of ninth, 10th, deciding which way to go is something which is unfortunately probably at that point of time the career counseling or mentoring was not so prevalent at that point of time. Even today, I guess it is still
Yes.
not very prevalent.
Yeah.
But here I would like to actually mention to the listeners today that do not take a route of chance. I mean, Gaurav has been very fortunate, very, very strong-willed person, which is why I think he could manage to, get his way through and get his destination finally. But there are scientific methods to really choose a career. A certified career mentor can actually help, and I can do that for you. So, any one of our listeners wanting to, take the service of trying to know about the future options which are available for children can connect with us so that we can help you with the right direction. And then the next steps can be really chosen. Those are much easier. Choosing the career, choosing the course to take up, and things like that. Those are much easier to choose.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I actually should have mentioned that. So most of the the journey that I've taken had a lot of effort of myself. So self
Hmm.
study, self research. But I did actually took service of a career counselor when I was working in Delhi, in Gurgaon. I mean, so I went to a career counselor, came to know from a friend, common friend, and although since I was working and I already did the masters, and I was actually just looking for immigration. Uh, but what I found is, if I would have met a career counselor earlier, as you mentioned, grade 9, grade 10, which are crucial foundational years, uh, maybe the path, I'm not complaining, I'm very happy with the path that I've taken. Each refusal also is a learning. Uh, but I think the path would have been different and for the good. So definitely there is a value there. And I would recommend, if I would have known you at that time, I would have probably reached out.
Okay, we take a short break and then we join back again after the break. Next part of the conversation is to discuss about various aspects of Canada. So I would like to start, Gaurav, with the first one. Why destination Canada? I mean, of course, you had your own personal reasons, as you mentioned in the earlier part of the conversation about choosing Canada as well as New Zealand, and you finally
Yeah.
chose to take up Canada because the processing happened faster. But if
Yeah.
somebody who is considering, to either to go and study higher education or to migrate, because I know that Canada and now also Australia and New Zealand have opened up, though in terms of PR process, probably only the Canada is still a big destination. But Australia, of course, is also a good option. So, if you can tell a little deeper about the option Canada and why destination Canada, what are the things which one can expect from Canada as a destination?
Sure. As you mentioned, I had my own reasons, but I think that reason could be shared with many other aspirants. So the number one reason I would say why people choose Canada and have chosen in the past, and hopefully will continue to choose if the policies don't change drastically, is the ease of immigration. And I believe for the most part, for the majority of the population, not just in India but across the world, who is English speaking, at least. Uh, there is, I don't think so. There is any other country with a relatively straightforward process that to get a permanent residency before even landing your foot on the soil. So this is, I believe, the biggest USP, at least if you ask me, that you can become a permanent resident of Canada without even coming here, provided you meet certain, conditions, which are very well laid out. And because Canada is such a huge country, uh, even if let's say there are so just 30-second overview of the whole immigration, you know, PR process. So Canada has a federal process and then a provincial level process. So the federal level process, very popular name Express Entry. Uh, so it has some, weighted system based on your education, your experience, where did you get your experience and education, vice versa, and your English or French skills. Uh, and depending on that, if you meet the cutoff, you get invitation, and then eventually you can apply and become PR. But if you don't meet that particular, weighted system, each province has their own set of metrics that they are looking for. If a certain province is currently having a shortage of certain skilled professionals, they may give you more weightage, regardless. Let's say if your English speaking skills are not, that high, or your education systems are not enough, education background is not enough to meet the federal program, you can go through the provincial program. So it is by far the most accessible and very well laid out and very swift also process, across the world. So that is for me the number one reason why people choose. And because it has been this way for, I would say, last 1 to 2 decades at least, there has been a lot of Indians already in India, already in Canada. So which brings me to the number 2 point is the familiarity. You don't feel that you are very far away from India, although you are, time wise, distance wise. Uh, any major metropolitan hub in Canada. So let's start from the west, Vancouver. Then if you go to Calgary, Edmonton in Alberta, Winnipeg, Saskatoon, and uh, Greater Toronto area where I am currently, even Montreal, which is in Quebec, French-speaking province, and you can just keep going on Halifax and St. John. You will find enough Indian community everywhere, so there is no problem of daily getting groceries, for example. And if you're feeling homesick, you can go to a gurdwara or temple, masjid, church. Indian-based churches are also there, and Jain temple, Buddhist. So your that uh, connection, spiritual connection, religious connection is also taken care of, and then networking becomes that much easier. So if you go on LinkedIn, let's say I'm from Lucknow. Probably I don't know if we'll talk about it or not in later, but uh, when I came here, how did I do networking? So I started looking at LinkedIn, who was from Lucknow, who have been where I have been, UK from the same university or from India. Is anyone probably who has worked in the same organization that I have worked before? So that's how I try to create connections. And in Canada, it's very easy. You will find someone or the other, and actually more than one people will find a larger group. So it is very easy to gel here and settle in. So that I would say the number two reason. And the third reason is just the country is very. If you follow global news or global affairs, Canada is the flag bearer of human rights, freedom, uh, legal system, law and order, just so much transparency here. I think that also is a very important point. So when you are here, you are no different or less or more than a, let's say, Canadian citizen or who have been third or fourth generation uh, immigrant here. So because talking about that, uh, yeah, there's just a statistic here. At less than 2% population of Canada is actually original Canadians, if you want to call them, or the native Canadians. So 98% have come from either they have come now or 100 years ago, but they are not originally from this land. So that brings me to the fourth point is just the work culture. So yes, each country and each province, and even if in India, if you work in the north versus south versus west, there is subtle differences in work culture. Here, you will not find as much of a difference. So if you're working in Toronto area versus a smaller town versus Vancouver, uh, the work culture is very similar because the mix is similar. So there's no one particular group that is, you can say, it has a majority. So everyone is coming from somewhere else. There's no accent. So if you go to, for example, England, you have the English accent, and you sometimes feel a bit, less comfortable or less confident when you initially visit the country. But in Canada, you will feel like everyone has their own accent. So just that freedom and confidence that comes with that freedom and with that diversity, I think that makes even more worthwhile to be in Canada. And I have been in UK, so I have something to compare against as well. UK is a great destination as well. Now I believe because after Brexit, they need more skilled people, so their immigration also is getting a bit more lenient. So another great destination to be there. But I can compare, Canada from UK. Uh, Always, any day, Canada would be preferred from UK just because of the reasons I mentioned. But having said that, if someone wants to go to UK, very old system. Uh, I mean, old meaning historic system and historic universities. There is value culture there as well, and you get although there is a Brexit, so UK is not a part of EU, but you still have access to the Europe. So the market is big there as well. But overall, I would say majority of the people would choose Canada over UK just because of the reasons I mentioned.
Fantastic. So the systems, what you said, there's a federal system and there is a provincial system. And
Yes.
those informations are easily available. I mean, do you have to really go to a certified agency to really process the applications, or somebody can actually do it directly and look at the relevant data, which I guess you can share with me so that I can put it on the show note, so that the aspiring young people from India can actually access those information directly. And of course, they can still go to a certified agency to take the services. But I guess if they have a right information which is available, then it becomes easier for them to really go about it.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with saying, first of all, how I chose. So, how I decided which way I want to go with the professional or not. So, I actually probably have met uh, all the major immigration consultancies, the big ones in Delhi area. Uh, but then after meeting them all, I said, okay, if I have time, and just because of being a son of a a business owner, there has been a culture in my family, and my father also does it. If you can do something, just do it yourself. It just gives you that extra level of confidence. Uh, so that's what I did. I did my research, went through all, talked to all the agents and immigration consultancies. No harm there. But then eventually I decided that it is just a matter of due diligence, and you need to have time to gather all the documentations that are required. So I did it myself. And if I did it myself, anyone else can do it as well. It's just a matter of researching it and having that time to diligently complete everything. So how to do that? Canada. Uh, so the agency in the government agency that is responsible for immigration is called IRCC. So if you Google IRCC Canada, you would get their very nicely laid website. You click on visit or immigrate. So they have like these thumbnails on their website. So if you click on immigrate, they'll say, okay, which kind of immigration are you? Spouse immigration, sponsorship required for parents. Are you economic? They call it economic immigrant, meaning students or uh, people who want to be a PR or want to apply for work permit. And then eventually they have study permit applications available there as well. So very detailed and highly recommended to go there, regardless even if you're going with a professional. But having said that, I understand a lot of people may not have the time to do that, or may not feel confident enough, to that. It's just sometimes it's a big decision, and people want to have it done through a professional's hand. So no harm there. Just I would say, whenever you choose an immigration agent, uh, just make sure that the authenticity of the individual or the organization, and even that you can actually, again, that is an IRCC. You can go there, you can search for a list of immigration agents. So each immigration agent, I'm going a bit detailed, but I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
important.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, each immigration agent has a registration number, and you can search that registration number in that directory on the IRCC website. If you find that that agent is active, uh, go ahead. You're safe there, because if a person who is active and is registered does something that is not called for, or is not legal, you feel that you're being not given the right service, you can actually you have the channel basically to complain, and that can impact their licensing and registration. So just because of this system in place, you're much more likely to not be frauded, or things like that. You'll get the genuine service. So I would say do this for sure if you're choosing a professional.
So, what do you suggest, or what you rather like to advise people? So, the agencies which are working in India, they are the ones to be relied upon, or you would suggest that somebody based in Canada would be a better choice because they are right there and they can do a more efficient job?
So there are two things here. So one is just the application process itself. So as I said, if you have done your due diligence, that agent is genuinely registered and active. If the person is in India or in Canada or anywhere else, doesn't really matter, because most of the application process is electronic. So there is no asset added advantage of a person being in Canada applying for you. However, you will see most of these, if I can call it packages, most of these application packages also include things like helping you settle in the country, or initial accommodation, things like that. So if you are going for a, let's say, all-inclusive package where basically someone is doing the application for you, once the application is successful, they'll do, let's say, ticketing for you. Once you land at the airport, someone is there to pick you up and at least give your temporary accommodation, and let you know how to roam around, basically how the transit system works, basically make you comfortable. Just like you, when you join a job, there is onboarding training happening just to make sure you are aware of the system. So it's similar to that. If you are taking an all inclusive package, I would recommend go with the person who is actually in Canada, because it is just so much obvious. You have a number you can reach out to, you have a place, you can go to that office or address. There is much more, I would say, reliability there. Because even I'm not saying don't go with the Indian. It's just it's a secondary hassle. So you're dealing with a person who is dealing with another person in Canada. So there is the middle layer. And why, if you can directly deal with a person who is in Canada, why not do that?
Yeah, I think this is absolutely making sense. So I think we covered quite a bit ground on this. Next would be once you have decided about, uh, obviously the destination decided, the agency to approach has been decided, and what next? And before that, let's look at from the point of view of two sets of people who would be interested to really go to Canada. One set of people who are professionals who are working in India and they would be interested to apply for the PR process. And obviously, the other set of people would be the young people who are probably just completed their 12th or have completed their graduation and looking for the next level of education. So, to talk about the first set of people who are wanting to apply for the PR process, what are the basic things which they should be aware of? For example, is there any age limit to talk about, and things like that? What are the basic things which one should do a self diligent test before really going ahead?
Sure. No, great question. Uh, so I'll start with this again. I'll refer to my previous answer. Uh, Regardless of the route you're taking, just go to the IRCC website and do your research. So you mentioned age. That is definitely one of the factors. So there is a certain weightage of points that you get when you apply for a express entry or a federal immigration program. So there is points for age. Generally, the younger you are, you get more points, and as you age, you get lesser points. It's just how the system is designed. There is, so I just want to clear, there is no ageism in Canada. So I have seen people, just giving a quick example. I've seen people who have come here like mid 40s. They have done, let's say, banking in India, uh, and then for whatever reason they have decided to join the forces, or policing, or for being a fireman. Absolutely possible. So there is nothing stopping age, ethnicity, your educational background. Nothing stops you to really do anything in Canada, and that's also one of the thing here. And you basically you can start your life, all over again. And just because income inequality is, I mean, income inequality is there in Canada, but I would say much lesser in India if you compare professions by professions. So generally, it's very comfortable from an economic barrier perspective that you can really choose whatever you want to do. So I want to mention that. But coming back to the original answer, so yeah, so there is a point for age, there is point for education, there's point for work experience. So if you have done education, let's say in Canada before, maybe you're working for a consultancy firm like PwC, I work for. They sometimes send you to overseas to do an assignment. If you have done, let's say, a year in Canada, you get extra bonus points for that. If let's say you were in an MBA or bachelor's program which had an exchange uh, program that you spend 1 year or 2 year in Canada, and then you have like a dual degree. So you have a degree from Canada and you have a degree from India or wherever. You get extra points for that because you have some education in Canada. And then you obviously English or French or both, if you know, has some weightage for it. So yeah, these all these things in a very sophisticated, complicated, and very detailed way. You will find it is on the IRCC website. It's like a questionnaire. You just start filling the details, and at the end it will give you the score. Let's say you get a 450 score, uh, and then you can go on again on the same website. You can see what was the cutoff of the last draw. So let's say the last draw was 440. So you see, okay, I'm very comfortable. I get 450, so I should very likely qualify for permanent residency. So so that's like a very detailed way to check, and I would highly recommend if you're thinking of doing that to do that. But then there is more to that. So you qualify for PR, but you really need to research whether going to Canada is a good decision for you based on your where you are in your life. So let's say if you have kids, that changes the situation. If you are at a certain point in your career where you're doing very well, or you're very happy with the career trajectory, you might want to think really hard, because if you're going to any country, Canada or anywhere else, it is a harsh reality that you would have to start for the majority of the cases. I would say if you leave apart the technical jobs, very highly technical jobs, for the other majority of the jobs, you would have to start at a bit lower level than you were in India. So are you ready to take that compromise, to make that compromise? And again, the journey to where you are in Canada, where you are in India, and to reach there in Canada could take you very long as well. So you really need to ask these questions. And then finally, I would say just search your profession as well. So, for example, if you are a very high profile banking manager in India, let's say your area sales manager or national manager, earning decent amount of money, very stable in your career, that job may actually not even exist, because the banking structure or how the jobs are divided here could be very different. So maybe that role isn't really helpful, and those kind of roles are you get there because of certain experience and exposure to the local market, which basically you don't have any when you come to Canada, regardless of how much ever experience. So you have to start very low. So maybe you might want to rethink your choice. And just one another thing here is, if you are in a regulated profession, so let's say if you're a teacher or if you're a nurse, it becomes even more harder because you have to come here. You would be able to come here. The PR process is one thing. You would be able to get the PR, but to get a job in your field, you'll have to then undergo through additional licensing, which could be very difficult for you, could be easy for you. Again, depends on case to case, but it definitely takes a lot of thinking to even decide to come here. So it's just much more than the application itself.
Okay, so what I could gather is that getting the PR is one part, getting a job is another part, and rebuilding your career is something which is associated with that. So,
Yes.
which means that if let's say somebody is in the age category of 40 to 45 or 47, and he or she is in a job right now in India and wanting to go through the process of applying for the PR, um, what kind of backup in terms of finance one should be ready with? Because going to a new country, of course, you will have to spend money for the PR process, for the travel, for the initial settlement, and things like that. Plus, by the time you probably get into your job in Canada, you will have to factor those time as well as the expenses. So I know it cannot be a thumb rule, but can there be a broad idea about what kind of money one should be prepared to keep aside while starting the process of this PR?
Great question. I have actually been asked this a lot of times because I have held that quite a few people get PR and also assign students as well. Uh, there is a website I would like to mention, and you can share it. It's called Numbeo, Numbeo. It it is a global database of each and every major city across the world, and you will get very detailed expenses there. Even like things like how much is the liter of milk cost, how much is a tray of egg cost, how much one bedroom apartment cost in the city center versus a little bit outside of the city center. So very detailed. I would highly recommend to do that. I have seen it is, I would say, plus minus 5% variance, but it is very accurate and it's updated quite frequently. So that's one thing you should do. But as a ballpark, uh, you should at least plan for about a year worth of expenses. That's recommended. If not, then at the very minimum, 6 months uh, is a must. Because when you come to a new country, yes, I said, if there are a lot of Indians here, you would make a social network very easily. But still, you want there are so much that needs to be done. You'll get a driver license, you'll get a health card, and there's so much administrative work that needs to be done that your 2 to 3 months will go. You won't even realize they are gone. But your expenses start as soon as you land here. So 6 months is a very bare minimum, but recommended at least 12 months of expenses. Again, expenses. Canada is a very big country, so if you're living in a metropolitan like Toronto, Vancouver, your cost can be very much different for, let's say, if you're living in Sydney, Nova Scotia. So it could be different. But I can tell you, if I don't know if it help, but I can tell you from the Toronto area, if you're living anywhere in the GTA as it's called, uh, for for a family, because you ask for people, most likely there'll be a couple, maybe a kid. For a family of three, 2 to 4, I would say, you should at least have, I would say, around 3 to 4 thousand per month uh, of
Canadian
expenses,
dollars?
3 to 4 thousand Canadian dollars. So roughly, as a safe bet, you should take about $45 to $50,000 in account for to cover up almost about a year worth. So that's highly recommended.
Yeah, I think
But again, yeah.
that's very well said. I think I will share also the website you mentioned about. I think that could be very important to share with our listeners. And also, I think when somebody wanting to go to a country like Canada or any other country for that matter, what is very clear nowadays is that these countries are obviously looking at skill gap. So, for example, I think Australia declared about as soon as they opened the borders, they also declared that the students, immigrants would be, I mean, especially the student will be allowed to work for a longer period compared to 20 hours per week, which is normally allowed. So like that, for Canada, what is the skill gap which is available? Is there any kind of website detail which is there where it is published, or is there any other public domain where these information is available so that our listeners can actually do the research about what is the skill gap and whether their profiles can fit in those skill gaps?
Yeah, so again, a very good question. And globally, just to the listeners, if I'm pretty sure you must have come across the word like Great Resignation, aging workforce. These keywords have been trending in the last year or so, and they reflect the true reality. And I have been in healthcare because last 2 years healthcare probably would be the most uh, I would say active industry in terms of involvement. So highly, very a lot of projects going on digitizing healthcare and shortage of human resources in healthcare, how things are done. So there's So healthcare is definitely very active, but I would say every industry, as we knew before COVID, has changed somewhat or the other way. But to check the gaps, there is again another website. It's called Government of Canada Job Bank. So if you search that, there is a website that you'll find, and each and every job in Canada that is published, so that is not filled through as an internal referral, would be there. So regardless of where the employer puts, so if they put the job on LinkedIn, there is a very good website here. Again, I would say Indeed.com is very popular and probably the best source for recruiters to recruit and advertise jobs. So Indeed.com, you should check it out. But regardless of which job portal the job was published, you will find that in the Government of Canada Job Bank, because it's kind of an amalgamator of all websites, and they also publish from time to time articles on where the job shortages are. The other important source I would mention is if you go on any particular province. So let's say if you go on Ontario's, if you want to look at, let's say if you are targeting Ontario and you want to see which skills uh, are in demand in Ontario, which where there is a gap, you search for that particular province and write provincial nominee program. So Ontario provincial nominee program, and there you find basically a web link. And at this point, I have checked each and every province in Canada has a specific immigration program or nomination program for a certain skills which is in demand or which there is a gap for. So it's some call it human capital priority stream, some say skill gap stream. There could be different name, but if you check any, so just type any province. So let's say Nova Scotia provincial nominee program. Open the link and you'll find skills in demand there. So, but overall, I can mention healthcare is definitely very high demand. So any profession really in healthcare. So any clinical profession, so nurse, doctor, physiotherapist, anything, uh, even administrator, consultants, uh, everything basically is in demand in healthcare. Just because I did an article, uh, uh, I work for a consulting firm, so we do this kind of work a lot. So it just to give one statistic, so you can imagine. So 11% of nursing population in Canada is either at retirement age or over retirement age.
Oh God.
And uh, so so you can imagine if that 11% just go out today, how much of a mess the healthcare system will be. And this is, I mean, even despite of that, where we should be from, if we compare, bed to nurse ratio, we are 30% below that. So 30% that, 10% even that gone. So you're looking at about 60 to 70% of what we actually should have. So huge demand there. So even for the students, if you're thinking of coming in healthcare, just come and just choose any profession you're passionate about, and you'll do good here.
That's
The other important uh, industry is tech, and Indians are really generally good at IT and engineering. Uh, I would although recommend here is if you can specialize yourself rather than be a general, developer or a networking engineer. If you go on one step further, and if you are a developer, let's say specialize in Java or specialize in Python. If you are a reporting, in analytics, just specialize, and there is a huge shortage here as well. And in some cases, because my wife is actually a recruiter in IT, we are so struggling that we have actually just hired directly from people in India. They were even not looking to come to Canada. So such is the demand. So if you are skilled enough, the recruiters will come to you. So its situation is that dire in tech skills.
fantastic. I think this is for all our young listeners and also people who want to really apply for the PR. I think for all of them it is so important. And I will be obviously sharing the details on the show note so that each and every information which Gaurav is actually so generously sharing with us can be so useful to all of you. And I'm sure it would be great help for all of you. Now, coming to the last question. In fact, a few days back, I was reading a news article about Canada immigration process now again targeting about, I believe, around 4 lakh immigrants, about 4 lakh immigrants every year, starting from 2022. So that's a great news. But at the same time, I also see, because we are dealing with overseas education ourselves, and we see that the process of admission is getting faster, but the process of getting the visa is getting longer. So could you explain two diametrically opposite issues? I mean, one is the current situation is that the visa process is getting delayed for whatever reason. At the same time, the Canadian government is aggressively now talking about inviting about 4.5 lakh immigrants every year for next 3 years, starting from 2022, which is quite positive. So, what exactly is happening on the ground?
So you're right, absolutely. So the 3-year plan is to actually bring in about 1.3 million uh, applications, so 4.5 lakh, as you mentioned, per year as an average. This 4.5 lakh actually includes a lot of different categories. Some would be students, some would be permanent residents, some would be spousal sponsorships, parental sponsorships, and then refugees as well. But still, regardless of a huge number. So for most listeners, I think just to give an idea of how big this number is. So Brampton, as most people are aware, is considered like a mini India in Canada. Has a population of around 600,000, so 6 lakh people. So and it's a major city. It's one of the top 10 cities in Canada. So imagine 4.5 lakh people coming into Canada every year. So basically, almost equivalent to one city, coming. So it's a huge. So just to put numbers in a reference, so it's a huge target from immigration. And just because the reasons that we shared, there's so much demand of skills that this number will always, at least in the near future, will keep going up. But to answer your question, is why? So I answered like why the government is keen on bringing so many people in. But the process is getting delayed just because there is so much of a backlog. So if you search online, you'll find articles that say 1.8 million applications, immigration applications are currently under process, and the system is just not designed to handle that kind of a backlog. And the backlog happened really because of COVID. And I would say I was just, I think last week or the week before that, the immigration minister here, Sean Fraser, he mentioned that there has been additional funding allocation and human resource allocation to clear this backlog, and hopefully by the end of this year we should see pre-pandemic timelines again. But yeah, this will still be, at least for the next few months, will keep going to be an issue for long. But what they're doing is they're targeting specific visa programs. So student immigration, definitely from a country's economy perspective as well. And just because student has a deadline, the classes start on a certain day, so you have to have the visa beforehand. So just because of those reasons, they try their level best to at least get the student visa done at the fastest rate possible based on the current resources. The other, the super visa for parents or visitor visas, they tend to suffer. So I can give my example. My citizenship application is now in the third year. Uh, Earlier, the timeline was around 12 months. Was around 12 months. So they're targeting. So hopefully, the new economic immigrants, people who are applying for PR, or the students who are going, they should start seeing the effect now. So the processing would eventually just keep going faster and faster.
Oh, that's very good news. I think so. For our listeners who have applied for student visa, I think they or are planning to planning to really apply for student visa. That's very good news. So you feel that maybe in few months' time things would be much better in terms of
Much better.
the processing time. That's very good.
Yes.
I think we covered a lot of ground today, Gaurav, and thank you for sharing all those important personal information and your own journey about the whole process. I will be obviously sharing all those specific information which you mentioned about the websites and other information which you shared. Also, I would suggest if you want to recommend any specific um, agencies based out of Canada who can help our aspiring children and young people to apply, we can share those information as well on the show note so that people can take the services if they want to. Of course, they should actually explore everything as rightly mentioned Gaurav did for himself before really getting into any particular agency to do their services. Uh, I think we have come to the end of this episode. We will catch Gaurav again to talk in detail about the healthcare industry. I think that's not just for Canada, but I think for across the world, healthcare industry is going to be the topmost growth area. And Gaurav, with his experience as an administrator, as a consultant, has a lot to share again. And we will definitely reconnect Gaurav with you for another episode, which is going to be also very, very good for our listeners for from the point of view of choosing the right career. And of course, some of them could also land up in Canada. So it was absolutely nice talking to you, Gaurav, and taking all those learnings from you. I have learned a lot about the whole process, and I'm sure all our listeners will really benefit out of this conversation and keep coming back to you wherever they need any support. I guess I can share your email ID and things like that if somebody wants to write in and take your help in the process. Thank you so much to join us.
No, it was a pleasure for me as well, and I hope this platform is able to help at least a few people, and then they can spread it across the network as well. So as I mentioned, I have been doing this, pro bono kind of a consulting, to help people get through the immigration process or students. So it's really a privilege for me as well to speak here. So yeah, I look forward to speaking on healthcare as well. It's something very close to my heart as well, not just because I'm working in it, but just because of for the listeners who will be listening the whole podcast, just the backstory of it. So it's something I'm very passionate about. I always have been. So yeah, if anyone wants to get in touch with me, I would actually give you my LinkedIn as well. So I think that's the best way, because email sometimes they're just too many, because I am actually also a professor. I'm teaching healthcare and operations management as well in a college. So yeah, it just emails tend to be too much. So, but LinkedIn is something I'm very much on. So please reach out to me, follow me there, connect with me. I try to respond pretty quickly there, and will do my best.
Thank you so much, Gaurav, and it was absolute pleasure to talk to you today. And listeners, I'm sure you'll benefit from this conversation. And if you feel that you need to know a little more about any specific subject with respect to Canadian process of PR or student visa processing, please do let us know. We will try to do another series of discussion with Gaurav, where we can specifically deep dive into those subjects and help you in the process of your career destination. Thank you so much for investing
Thank
your
you.
time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.